Thanksgiving used to mean something, even if it was mostly performance. The table was always perfectly set, the pies arranged like props, and my family played their parts with tight smiles and tighter silences. I played mine tooth peacekeeper, the flexible one, the daughter who never made things difficult. But this year, something was off. No group text. No last-minute reminder about bringing my usual pumpkin pie. Just silence. Still, I showed up maybe out of hope, maybe out of habit. And that's when it happened. I hadn't even made it up the front steps before my mother stepped outside and shut the door behind her. My father followed. No hugs, no hellos. "You're not invited, Harper," my mother said, her voice calm. "Go home." Behind them, I could see my sister laughing at the dinner table, my uncle pouring wine, my best friend sitting in my seat. I nodded, turned, called one number. And 20 minutes later, everything exploded. I kept checking my phone that morning, like the invitation might show up late out of guilt or absent-mindedness. It didn't. No text from my mom. No, "Bring the pie like always," from my sister. Just silence. And silence, in my family, was never neutral. It was intentional. Growing up, I always knew how to read the undercurrents. Rachel, my older sister, could throw a tantrum and still be called passionate. I'd voice concern once and be labeled dramatic, so I learned to read the room, lower my voice, make myself useful. I was the emotional buffer between my parents, between Rachel's moods and our mom's pride, between my dad's silence and everything it covered. But this year, something shifted. It had started small missed calls that weren't returned, inside jokes I no longer understood, birthday dinners I heard about afterward. Still, I told myself it was just life pulling us in different directions. People drift, families grow apart. But not like this. This was erasure. Deliberate. I'd spent the morning baking anyway, like muscle memory. A pumpkin pie, slightly burnt at the edges, the way my dad weirdly liked it. It sat cooling on my counter while I stood in the hallway, staring at my coat like it might tell me whether or not to go. I went. Because some part of me still needed to believe I mattered enough for this to be a misunderstanding. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual, though it was only 25 minutes. I played the same acoustic playlist I always used to calm my nerves before family events: Ben Howard, soft piano covers, a safety net of sound. But even that didn't soften the dread curling in my chest. And when I pulled into the driveway, I knew. The porch light was on. The house was lit up from inside. Through the front window, I could already see the table set. Glassware clinked. Someone laughed Rachel, unmistakably. My Uncle George leaned back in his chair, mid-story, and across the table from him, like a punch to the chest, was Zoe. My best friend. We hadn't spoken in weeks, but I didn't think that meant this. Then the front door opened, and my mother stepped out. She didn't look angry. She looked composed, like this was something they'd rehearsed. My father followed, adjusting his watch like he couldn't wait to be done with it. "You're not invited, Harper," my mother said softly, but firmly. "Go home." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Behind her, Rachel laughed again. I nodded. No fight, no begging. Just one pivot. I turned, walked back to my car, and made one call. A voice answered. "Hi, everything okay?" I didn't explain. I just said, "You still taking anonymous submissions for the Thanksgiving column?" She paused. "You ready to talk?" I stared back at the house, at the silhouettes behind the window that had always excluded me. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am. There's a specific kind of cold that doesn't come from the weather." That's what I felt standing there on the front steps, pie still warm on the passenger seat of my car, my breath visible in the air between us. But my parents' faces, especially my mother, shelled no warmth at all. I waited. For what, I don't know. A softening? A smile that told me this was some sort of twisted joke? It never came. "You're not invited, Harper," she said again, slower this time. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I looked past her shoulder, into the house. Everything was glowing. The chandeliers I helped her pick out last spring shimmered over the long mahogany table. Wine glasses caught the light. Napkins folded into perfect little triangles. It was Thanksgiving magazine perfect. And I wasn't in it. Behind her, Rachel had her phone out, laughing at something on the screen. Uncle George was carving turkey with the confidence of someone who'd never once questioned his place at the table. And Zoe, the friend who cried in my dorm room the night her parents divorced, was sipping wine like she belonged there more than I ever had. No one looked up. Not even once. My dad cleared his throat beside my mother. We thought maybe, with everything you've said lately, you'd prefer not to come. Everything I've said? You mean the one time I mentioned feeling out of place? Or when I turned down Rachel's bachelorette party because I couldn't afford the 800 hotel suite? I made pie, I said. It came out like a whisper. Stupid. Small. A child's offering. My mom's mouth twitched pity or discomfort, I couldn't tell. I'm sorry, she said. We didn't know how to tell you. So, we didn't. There it was. Not anger. Not even cruelty. Just convenience. I nodded slowly. Not because I understood, but because I understood enough. I stepped backward down the steps, heels clicking on concrete like punctuation marks. My hand trembled as I opened the car door, but I didn't let them see it. Once inside, I sat for a moment with the engine off, keys in my lap. The silence felt sharp. Then I picked up my phone. Scrolled. Tapped. A voice answered after one ring. Harper? It was Lena, my former editor and now Frenchie, ran a mid-sized social commentary blog that just launched a holiday column, Stories That Don't Make the Cards. Is it too late to pitch a story? I asked. There was a pause. Not if it's honest. I closed my eyes. The image of Zoe laughing in my chair burned behind my eyelids. I've got one, I said. I'm calling it The Daughter Who Brought the Pie anyway. Lena didn't ask many questions. She never did. That's what I liked about her. Within 10 minutes of my call, I had typed the whole thing up from my phone. No names, no accusations, just the truth. The porch, the words, the faces at the table, the pie still warm in the passenger seat. I ended it with a single line. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to say anything, but I still brought the pie. I hit send, sat back in the dark of my car, and waited for nothing to happen. But 20 minutes later, my phone lit up like a fire alarm. First came the message from Zoe. Hey, Harper, where are you? I didn't know you were coming. Then Rachel. What did you do? Then my mother. Please call me, this isn't the way. One after another, like birds breaking from a tree. Missed calls, DMs, a voicemail from my dad I didn't bother playing. I opened the blog. My post was already up. The title? The Daughter Left on the Porch. I stared at the screen. It felt surreal, like reading someone else's story. But the comment section said otherwise. This happened to me last year. Still haven't spoken to my parents. God, this hit hard. Families like that don't deserve your silence. I cried. I thought I was the only one. I scrolled, breath catching on each line. Dozens, then hundreds. People didn't just read it, they felt it. They recognized the coded language. The emotional manipulation wrapped in civility. The way cruelty disguises itself as family tradition. And I hadn't even named a soul. I didn't have to. The people who needed to recognize themselves already had. By the time the post crossed 8,000 shares, I stopped looking. My phone kept buzzing on the seat beside me. I let it. I drove back to my apartment slowly, as if trying to hold on to the clarity I'd found in that gas station parking lot. For the first time, I wasn't replaying what I should have said or wondering if I overreacted. I didn't say anything. And somehow, that said everything. Inside, I didn't turn the lights on. I sat on the couch with the pie in my lap, its crust cracked from the cold, and listened to the quiet. No yelling, no guilt, just me. I opened Instagram once, out of curiosity. Rachel had archived all her stories. Zoe's account was private. My mom's profile was blank. They were hiding. And I wasn't. I thought the noise would die down by midnight. But it didn't. The post was still spreading. I watched it jump platforms, Twitter, then Facebook, even a Reddit thread dissecting family scapegoat patterns. People were tagging friends, telling their own stories. Some guessed who I was. Most didn't need to. They already knew a Harper of their own. I turned my phone on silent and curled under a blanket. Not to sleep, just to breathe. My pie sat half-eaten on the coffee table, like a quiet witness. I hadn't cried. Not yet. Then came the message request. I almost deleted it out of reflex, but the name stopped me. Margot Langston. I hadn't heard that name in over 10 years. She was my cousin, my aunt's daughter. We'd been inseparable when we were little fort builders, secret keepers, the kind of cousins who felt like sisters. And then one year, around Thanksgiving, She just disappeared. No one explained. She wasn't mentioned again. And when I asked, my mother had said flatly, she made her choices. The DM was short. I read the post. I know it's you. I've been waiting for someone else to say it. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. You okay? The typing bubble popped up instantly. Can I call you? I haven't talked about this in forever. I don't want to hold it alone anymore. I hesitated, then gave her my number. The phone rang once. Then her voice, shakier, older, but unmistakably hers. Harper? Yeah. A pause. Then, God, I didn't even know if you'd remember me. I never forgot. And just like that, the wall I'd spent years building cracked wide open. Margot started slow. She'd been 16 when she got pregnant. Her mom supported her, but our family didn't. Uncle George called her a disgrace. My parents stopped speaking to her side entirely. And eventually, Margot left town. But what cut deepest wasn't the judgment hit, was the way the family rewrote the narrative afterward. They told everyone I chose to leave, that I didn't want to come back. She paused, then said something that gutted me. They erased me, Harper, and I let them because I thought maybe I deserved it. I blinked hard, throat tightening. That's how I felt this whole time, I whispered. Like if I just behaved better, or tried harder, they'd let me back in. Another pause. Then she said, but you said something. You wrote it down. You cracked it open for the rest of us. Thank you. I looked around my quiet apartment, warm light, mismatched furniture, imperfect and safe. I didn't do it to be brave, I admitted. I know, she said. That's what made it brave. We talked for an hour about family systems, about survival, about how silence becomes a language. And when we hung up, I didn't feel healed. But I didn't feel alone either. It happened at exactly 3:17 p.m., the day after Thanksgiving. 3 knocks, sharp, measured, like they didn't belong to family, but to a courier or a cop. I froze on the couch, half wrapped in the blanket I'd slept under, my phone still buzzing every few minutes from lingering fallout. A new podcast had just tagged the article. Someone else wanted an interview. I hadn't replied to a single message. I was still trying to remember how to breathe. I crept to the door, barefoot, heartbeat in my throat. The peephole showed me what I already feared. My mother. And behind her, standing stiff with his arms crossed like he was here on official business, my father. My hand hovered above the deadbolt. No call, no text, no warning. They came in person. I didn't open the door fully, just cracked it an inch and kept the chain latched. My mother blinked at me, startled. She was wearing her navy holiday coat, the one I bought her 3 Christmases ago. It still looked new. Harper, she said, voice warm and brittle at once. Can we come in? Behind her, my father said nothing. He just shifted from foot to foot, like the porch was too small for his discomfort. No, I said. She looked shocked, genuinely shocked, like the word no had never been assigned to her before. Sweetheart, she tried again. This isn't who you are. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just said it plainly. You mean it's not the version of me you're used to, quiet, grateful, invisible? That girl's gone. Her mouth opened and closed. My father stepped forward. We've been getting calls, he said, clipped. People are asking questions. Your uncle saw the post. Your mother hasn't slept. Carol's crying in the guest room. I nodded slowly. So this is about how it looks. No, Mom snapped. This is about you airing private pain on the internet for strangers to dissect. I didn't name anyone. You didn't have to, she whispered. We recognized ourselves. There it was, the first honest thing she'd said. But you didn't recognize me, I replied. You recognized yourselves, and what you've done. My dad let out a sharp breath. Harper, for God's sake, don't turn this into martyrdom. We thought you weren't coming. Rachel said you were feeling distant. I held up a hand. I live 15 minutes away. No one texted. No one called. Mom's eyes welled, but I didn't flinch. Why now? I asked. Why show up now? Because it's gone too far, she said, voice cracking. Because people are watching. Silence stretched long between us. Then my father snapped. You need to take it down. And something in me split. I stepped back just enough to let the door swing wider, still chained, but enough for them to see my face fully. You didn't forget me, I said, voice calm. You erased me. And now that I've spoken, you're not worried about me. You're worried about the reflection, about the cracks in the picture you've spent decades polishing. He looked stunned. I'm done polishing, I added. You're hurting the family, my mother whispered. No, I said. I'm just showing the bruise. My father's jaw clenched. This is childish. And there it was. The sentence that broke the last sliver of empathy I had left. Without a word, I closed the door. Not a slam, just steady, final. I slid the chain back into place, turned the deadbolt, and stood there with my hand on the knob, listening. Outside, I heard her say, "She's not thinking clearly," and him muttering something I couldn't quite catch before their footsteps faded. My knees wobbled, but I didn't cry. Instead, I walked back to the kitchen, took the last slice of pie from the fridge, and ate it standing up. Cold. Cracked. Perfect. And when the phone buzzed again this time, from Rachel didn't look. I was done looking. The next morning, I woke to 47 unread messages. And not the kind that demand, not the kind that guilt. These were different. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in years, a college roommate, a former art professor, even a girl from high school I barely remembered but who apparently remembered me. I always thought you seemed quieter at reunions. Now I get it. You gave words to something I never could. Thank you. One message stood out, a short email with no subject line from someone who'd once been my writing mentor. Harper, that post? It's not just truth, it's legacy. That kind of honesty echoes. I sat in silence after reading that one, let it settle into my ribs like something warm. And then inevitably came Zoe. A voice message. I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the play button, part of me wishing I could just delete it, pretend it never existed. But I pressed play. Her voice was cautious, tiptoeing like it was afraid of tripping. Hey, I just wanted to say, I didn't know. I mean, I did, but not like that. Your mom said you weren't feeling up to it. Rachel said you were probably traveling again. And I guess I believed it. I'm sorry you felt left out. Felt. As if my exclusion were a misinterpretation. As if standing on the porch with a pie in my hand was a feeling, not a fact. I never wanted to hurt you, she added quickly. I was just trying to keep things smooth, neutral. Neutral. That word again. The same one people use when they sit beside injustice and call it peace. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because I had nothing to say to a fence sitter who didn't realize the fence had spikes. Instead, I opened another message, this one from a woman named Elise, someone I'd never met. Thanksgiving. 2019. They did the same to me. I drove 5 hours and never made it inside. I thought I was weak for crying. You made me feel strong for surviving. That word. Surviving. It echoed louder than anything else. Because that's what I'd been doing. Not living, not belonging, not thriving. Just surviving. And now, in the space between the silence and the noise, between the rage and the relief, I realized I wasn't alone. Not even close. I was one voice in a chorus that had waited far too long to be heard. And I was finally listening too. It came in the mail. No return address, no stamp I recognized. Just a plain white envelope with my name written in my dad's handwriting, rigid, slightly tilted, always in all caps like he was labeling a box in the garage. I stared at it on my kitchen counter for 2 hours before opening it. I wasn't sure what I was bracing for, an ultimatum, a plea, another push to take the post down. But when I unfolded the single sheet of lined paper, I froze. It wasn't long. 2 paragraphs. No greeting, no sign-off. But it was him. I read it. That was the first line. No denial, no defensiveness. Just, I read it. At first I was angry. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was. And it hurt to see it so clearly laid out. I saw myself in the silence. In the driveway. In the space where a father should have said something and didn't. I swallowed hard. I've always prided myself on staying out of the drama. I thought neutrality was grace. But maybe it was just cowardice. Maybe standing still let everything keep moving the wrong direction. There was a pause in the writing, a literal gap in the lines. And then, maybe I failed you quietly. That was the sentence. The one that broke me. Not because it excused anything, but because it didn't try to. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't promising to change. He wasn't even sure he could. But he saw it. He finally saw me. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter in my lap, the morning light hitting the corner just enough to make the ink gleam. My hands trembled, not from rage this time, but from some fragile emotion I hadn't let myself name yet. It wasn't healing, not all the way. But it was something. A small crack of light in a wall I thought would never break. I didn't text him. I didn't call. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But I put the letter in a drawer I usually keep empty, one where I store things too important to throw away and too raw to look at often. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like screaming. Just breathing. Quietly. Fully. 1 year later, on Thanksgiving morning, I woke up to the smell of cinnamon, not tension. There was no group text, no checklist from my mother, no carefully constructed seating chart where I'd get the folding chair near the trash can. There was just me, the sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, and a pie in the oven I actually wanted to make. At 2:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. Margot was first to arrive carrying homemade stuffing and a bottle of wine she couldn't pronounce. Her smile was wide, unguarded. We hugged like people who'd never been allowed to hug freely before. Then came Elise, the woman who messaged me last year after the blog post went viral. We'd struck up a friendship that grew into something real trauma-bonded at first, sure, but now rooted in actual trust. A couple more trickled in, some I'd invited. One brought a friend. There was no head of table. No assigned seats. Just cushions, thrifted chairs, a mismatched table runner, and laughter that didn't come at anyone's expense. No one raised their voice. No one cut with sarcasm. No one was left outside the door. I made a short toast before we ate, nothing rehearsed, just truth. Here's to second chances, chosen families, and pie that doesn't need to prove anything. Everyone laughed. At one point, Margot spilled cranberry sauce on the couch. We used a kitchen towel to blot it up and kept passing plates like it never happened. No shame, no sideways glances, just real life. And somewhere between dessert and stories about awkward childhood school plays, I looked around and realized, this is what a table is supposed to feel like. Not a performance. Not an audition. A place where you can be seen and stay. I haven't spoken to Zoe since her voice message last year. I never did text my mom back. My dad sent me one photo 2 weeks ago of a pie he tried to bake. It was a little burnt. I didn't reply. But I smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval to feel whole. I had chosen truth. And in doing so, I'd chosen myself. As the evening wound down and Margot started washing dishes unasked, I thought about the door they closed last year, the one I had stood in front of with pie in hand and hope in my throat. They never opened it. So I built a new one. And this time, it's staying open.